parcel, a particular parcel of the county? Because it sounds to me like with the state program, you're regulating the number of units, and that may or may not manifest itself in some exterior change to the building, a higher building. But with the program you're proposing, the local program, you're regulating, you're allowing a number, an increase in the height of the building to occur almost as a matter of right. It's an entitlement. I mean, someone wants to have a certain number, certain percentage of affordable units, they can go up to maybe even 3 floors extra. How in your program will you distinguish between the corner lot where no one cares when the building is 2 stories higher than it is, than it could be, and the mid-block site with residential houses or apartments next to it, where it would be very intrusive for you to add those extra floors? How are you going to do, instead of a one-size-fits-all, how are you going to do something that takes individual circumstances into account? How does the program do that?
The first thought I had is the design guidelines, right? So we will still be doing design review for these buildings, and we have a reputation as a city of spending a lot of time making sure we get the design of the buildings right. We have architects on staff that really look at the context of the building as well as the building itself. So that would be probably the strongest defense in this program and in our existing planning code, is really thinking about how to make the building work. But we don't differentiate, just to be crystal clear, between mid-block and corner lot.
But those guidelines are voluntary. I mean, what if somebody decides not to follow those guidelines? Do you have any teeth in this program where you can force them to do something that you think will better fit into the neighborhood?
The design guidelines are voluntary, but the Planning Commission is our board, and we recommend or don't recommend a project. And I've never seen a project go forward without planning department recommendation, because nobody wants to go to the commission and get turned down. So our real leverage is the planning commission hearing. There's not a requirement with design guidelines other than that they follow them, because design guidelines, we can't be prescriptive. What makes sense in the mid-block is very different than what makes sense on the corner, and then in a different block, things are different. That's why they are guidelines.
Is there a finding that's required of the planning commission? The planning commission must, for example, determine that the effect on the neighborhood will not be detrimental to the neighborhood. Is there a finding, specific finding, like a conditional use?
In the state,
conditional use permit?
yes, there is. And in the state law, there is a requirement that we don't do that we are not required to grant anything that has adverse impacts on the neighborhood, which is a legal definition in CEQA. So,
of course not.
I read it a little more prescriptive.
Yeah, those are CEQA's, and that's margin.
But I think your question deserves some other thought on our part. It's a very, very good one, a very central one. Sorry, to be clear, I think that part of here is to sort of guide people into this local option, is to provide some level of certainty, right, as the trade-off of getting more affordability. That said, this comes down to a site-by-site, case-by-case, and I think you're absolutely right. We need to sort of think about what is that.
Well, I think we use
What is
special
that
use districts
finding?
as a way to deal with these parcels under the state program going backwards.
Yeah.
And I share your concern about spot zoning. Spot zoning is planning, want to do that. No. On the other hand, what's wrong with it? If you've got 240 sites, 30,000, something's going to happen. Why don't you do one-offs on each of those 240 sites and maybe allow it to grow a little or shrink a little depending on what happens on the ground, but allow it to be treated uniquely and specially in a way that respects the neighborhood and
right.
doesn't create the kind of project that distorts the character of the neighborhood in a way that maybe is what people are worried about.
I totally get the goal there, and we need to do something about it. Is there some alternative way we could deliver some of that? Because we can't legally do spot zoning. We wouldn't want to, but I understand.
I don't think this isn't about affordable housing. I think I bet you everyone in the audience here has experienced trouble with finding places to live. We all understand how terrible the rents are in the city. We all understand how difficult it is for people to live here now. So the idea and the principle of creating affordable housing and doing something to incentivize that makes perfect sense. It's the way you do it that matters.
Those being context sensitive is one way planners like it. I agree.
Why not limit to the 240 soft sites for, and then, once that's 240 are developed, then go to other sites? So just limit the program to those 240 soft sites.
We can think about legal alternative ways to try to get at that objective. But I'm not going to promise anything tonight because I think it's fraught with legal concerns. So I just want to think about that a little bit. But I totally am hearing your concern about that. Let me, if I could, is that on this point? Yeah, I was going to say, let me go through the cards here. Next one, tracking dislocated rent control residents, which we've said no, this program won't dislocate them, and monitoring incomes for AHBP tenants will add administrative costs to monitor. By the mayor's office, question mark, have these staff and program costs been computed? How will these costs be paid for?
Yes, the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development have both created staffing plans and administrative plans around growing their current functions. And I believe, although I'd have to check, I believe that the developers that have these units pay annual fees as part of the monitoring. But I will check on that detail.
The city's median income is $76,000 to $77,000. Why providing affordable housing for people earning 200% of median income?
So just to be totally clear, we're doing, this program is adding to the layer cake of permanently affordable housing. We currently build housing for very low income with public subsidy. We do low and moderate with our inclusionary housing program. This program will enhance the production at those levels and also add middle income. The reason the city is interested in adding middle income housing is we're losing middle income households, partly because they cannot afford to move here and live here, or we've got people who moved here, lived in a rent control unit, and then can't find a house as they age.
The second clarifying question on this part is, would the city ever consider means testing for tenant incomes this is in rent control units or in the new program, this program?
Yeah, this program is means tested, and it's means tested on an annual basis. So in terms of rent control, I don't believe that that's ever been seriously considered.
Okay. The state versus local option in this program, which one fosters greater density? That's one part of the question.
The local program.
Okay. And what will be done to have adequate public transportation? The city has a history of extreme laws that can't be supported by infrastructure. What relief and incentives will local businesses have? They are being pushed out by high rent levels as well.
So in terms of paying for transportation, the city just passed what we call the transportation sustainability fee. So every time someone builds a new commercial or residential use, they have to pay a certain amount of money to the city's transportation funds, to the city's sewer funds, and to the city's school funds. So the theory behind this is that as the city grows, our initial investment in that infrastructure grows through these impact fees, and then our ability to maintain the additional infrastructure and wear and tear comes through the new property taxes that is generated. And there was a second part to that question, I'm sorry. Something about... I forgot. Okay, great.
Yep. Next question, the bonus increased density. Will this increased density have to have environmental impact study?
Yes.
Okay. On affordable owned units, if the original owner sells, what controls are there that the sales price will remain affordable?
There's a deed restriction on the unit, so it will be restricted to whatever income level it was first sold to. So 90% goes to 90%, 140 goes to 140.
This program will allow developments to avoid long-standing good housing policies like density and height limitations. Are these policies no longer beneficial to our city? Big question.
I'm running to my favorite map ever, actually. A lot of people feel like higher density is going to really change the neighborhood character, and higher heights is really going to change the neighborhood character. My team have made this map of your district. Everywhere there's a dot, there's a building that's above its existing density limit. So just to give you a sense of, I think the orange dots are places where the buildings are 1 or 2 units above their density limit. 54%. There's 2,600 buildings in this district that are above their existing density limit. 3 to 5 units are the orange dots or yellow, and then the purple are 6 units or more above their density limit. About 22% of buildings in this district. So again, the density limits and the height limits were established in the late 70s. Not based on what was there or what was appropriate, but based on this idea that downtown was going to get really big, and we wanted to make sure that whatever was happening downtown didn't happen in the rest of the city. We didn't do planning and decide this is the right density or this is the right height. We just kind of quickly blanketed it over. So I like to think of our density and height controls as these sort of kind of like a ping pong thing. It's kind of send us in the right direction based on our current economy, and then we adjust them, and so they get adjusted over time. We're in a period where we're growing. In the 80s, when we established these height and density limits, we were in a period where all cities across the U.S. were losing population, so this choice made sense.
Can you just clarify, when you say density, there's in my mind, two definitions. One is the number of units in a building, and the other density is the bulk of the building on the lot.
So density in my mind means the number of units on the site, and bulk means how big is the building.
So when we say density, we mean number of units in the building.
So in the districts that we're working in, density is regulated by a number of units to lot area. So that's what we're talking about. Instead of allowing 10 units on a particular site, you'd allow 13.
This is not a question for you guys, but just to follow briefly, how, are you representing myself?
Yes.
How are you recording all this? Because Mark will be voting on this. What district you
Well, I'd like to think I have a good memory. I'm taking a lot of the themes, from the meeting tonight, obviously planning staff, taking copious notes of all the questions and concerns here. And, I think a lot of the questions have been around, the process, the input, and where the checks and balances are. And I think you brought up the right point, that we're your elected representative. We represent District 2. It's my job to come here, to listen to your concerns, to take them to heart, and to help, relay that information to Mark as he's going to make a decision here. Because, again, we're at the really early stages in terms of the process here. We're going to the Planning Commission, and this is really going to be a legislative decision where Mark and our other 10 colleagues on the board are going to make a policy call on whether it's the right program or not, whether we're going to make tweaks or not. So that's the intent. We're just making sure that we're listening to concerns. That's a separate body. That's the Planning Commission, so that's separate from the boards. But I would say this, the Planning Commission are all independent, and so they can make their own decision as a commission on whether they want to continue the matter, whether they want to take action on the matter, whatever it may be. But that's the first step necessary before it gets in front of the board of supervisors, board of supervisors committee, and ultimately the board of supervisors. So,
You can also email your comments.
yeah, of course. I'll leave some cards at the back table so if anyone wants to take them.
I want to just do a little bit of a process check because it's after 8 and I know people are anxious to get going. We have a few more cards. This last batch of cards are bigger questions that are not about the inside of the program, but more about what are alternatives to the program, what is the reasoning behind the program. Happy to give our best shot at those. We're probably not going to satisfy you with the answers because they're really about should we repeal state law and so forth and so on. But I'm happy to go through those if you want to stay. The alternative would be we're certainly going to publish these questions and respond to them. But if there are one or two burning questions about the specifics of the
I'd like
program,
to
as opposed
clarify
to-
the bulk as it pertains to this. Can they increase bulk any way they want as well?
So most of the parcels in the program area have what's called an X bulk limit, meaning that it's not very prescriptive. But let's say they do have a bulk limit that says after like 4 stories, you have to move in a little bit and have a smaller footprint. That remains. It remains that there's a sculpting of the building, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm interested in the lot coverage aspect of the bulk.
So there's a menu of incentives and concessions, and one of the options is, and this, I don't know the number off the top of my head, I'll flip to the slide in a minute, but a 5 or 10% reduction in the rear yard requirement through this program. None of it ever gets to the lowest amount of open space that we require in some of our more dense districts.
Thank you. I have a question about the middle class. What evidence do you have that the developer would actually lose money on the middle class component of the local program, which is 18% of the units? Because under your brochure, they could sell a unit to one individual at $398,000, and they could sell it to 4 people for $579. So only 40% would have to be put together. So 60% would be sold to one person at $398,000 each. What evidence do you have that the developer actually lose money constructing it at that level, and also lose money on even the 4-unit constructing at $579,000?
That's a great question. I have 2 answers to that. One, I'd like you to take a look at the cycle study, which looked at the cost of construction per square foot and compared it to the income per square foot for those middle income units. And we use these numbers based on a lot of existing buildings that we have data on that have recently been constructed. So our goal is actually not to make sure the developer loses money, but to make sure that we're offering a middle income household a unit that they couldn't otherwise get on the market. So because of that, we've also put a requirement in the legislation, or it's probably in the substitute, which is coming up soon, that says, let's say you're selling a building at 140%, a unit for 140% AMI, that's your plan, it's your middle income unit, you get entitled that way, and then something happens in San Francisco's market, by the time you're fully constructed, 140% is market, we request you do a market study, and we make you go at least 20% below the market, because we don't want to be subsidizing, we don't want to be giving credit for what is a market rate unit. So we have a mechanism in place that enables us to make sure that if the market drops, the affordability of that unit also drops.
That's helpful, but he said that the developer would lose money constructing the market rate units, and the fact is, there's no evidence that would happen.
Check out the cycle study. I believe that'll answer your question. The cost per square foot versus the value per square foot when you're selling at those middle income rates is a very big difference. So they are subsidized.
Yeah, I didn't say or mean to say certainly that they'd be losing money on the market. Let me just to be faithful to the group, I just want to, I'm not going to read all the wording in the question, but really quickly, just so you know the sentiments of other comments here, and these are mostly comments, although some are stated in the form of questions. Why not simply require developers to include some percentage of affordable units as a condition of the building without changing the density or the heights? So that essentially is what our inclusionary program is, but that's one comment. The second one is somewhat related. Supervisor Kim has proposed inclusionary of 25%, so that would be effectively doubling the current amount of inclusionary requirement. Does the mayor have an inclusionary proposal? The short answer I wanted to know, but he's convened a housing task force to sort of look at that question. Should the base inclusionary affordable units in any project with or without height bonuses be increased? That'll be something going on over the next few months. And why is this program first ahead of consideration of that proposal? With the widespread loss of views and parking in competition with residential and businesses displacement, should this displacement get a vote of the residents? Next, the problem is essentially Muni. Make Muni better, fix it. Essentially, don't aggravate the transportation situation with more housing before fixing Muni. Why not try to get the density bonus law at state level presumably repealed? If I am very low income and live in rent-controlled, in a permanent rent-controlled unit, would I be entitled to move back at 30% of my income? Well, we've taken the rent-control piece out of this, so that's no longer an issue. Why can't you put this on the ballot? On the ballot, so residents can tell you what's wanted and not just developers. Can the state overrule the San Francisco local program, strike it down, or strike down local constraints that are added? Interesting legal question. I suppose hypothetically they could, but it would most likely take an act of the legislature to do that. And then there was a final, two more questions. One is, has there been third-party review of the legislation to analyze loopholes?
Yes, to that one. I think that I have a lot of friends and family in the room, as well as a lot of advocates in the city who are constantly reading the legislation and helping us find errors and helping us think about the intricacies of the program. I want to be totally clear that we developed this legislation in concert with a task force of stakeholders who do affordable housing development, affordable housing advocacy, market rate development, land use attorneys. So we have all of the different perspectives of the people who are more comfortable reading the planning code. We also have some great attorneys in the room who are constantly giving us further input on it as well.
There's not been any contract for a third-party review, essentially using the public review process for that aim. The final part I have here is a two-parter. There apparently was a letter sent to us containing 50 questions that was sent in December, and they'd like answers to those. When are we going to answer those?
I can answer that question. My team
What have
has.
you been doing at night?
My team has about a 30-page document going of all the questions and answers. What we're trying to do, a little bit like what Gil has been doing tonight, is lump the questions topically, and we plan and hope to be putting that out this week or early next week. We'll send that to folks on our list and put it on our website, and then continually update it as we have more meetings.
And then the final one I have here on the cards is, there are at least 3 overlapping affordable housing proposals. Why not settle on just one that's acceptable to the city and its residents, and in the meantime use special use districts?
Yes.
I would take that as an option. So any questions that we didn't get to, you're perfectly welcome to submit additional questions to us. I see one more raised hand here, and then 2 more, and then we really want to thank you for your 3 more, and then we want to thank you for your time tonight. And you can always submit questions or concerns to us online. So let's get to your question first.
What I think is part of the problem is that people are feeling very mistrustful of a lot of decisions that are being made in the city. And I think that, for one, I am really disappointed that you're talking about, this says affordable housing. Now I'm hearing you sort of rephrase it as well as for really middle income that we're concerned about. And that you haven't thought through some of the real, things that people have been bringing up about what happens to rent control units. And, is BMI the same as, all of those kind of things. And I think what the city does is they want to look like they're coming up with a solution. But I think something like this that really has to do with the overall growth of not just the city, the whole region, about companies that are running hundreds and hundreds of units there, but not helping to provide any housing for them. that then start, putting thousands of, extra vehicles on the street. Things that many people have worked for many, many years to try to have a handle on. And what I want from my planning department is to really think of those very specific things that really do affect the people that have been here. And that people, for years, rent control and the dominance of renters in the city, has always been the fabric. And what's happening, you could just look at them, at what's been built more recently with all underdevelopers, just the regular housing thing. It's condos. And it worries me now as a renter, and yeah, I'm a low-income renter, but I've lived here for over 40 years, and I'm in the Bay Area all my life, is I don't want to be an afterthought to a housing plan for my city that is working well for the new guys coming in and can afford the higher income. It's going to work just fine for some of the folks in the Richmond and the Sunset, because it's not going to particularly change some of those folks. But we're putting density where there's already density and where there's already transportation problems. And when you folks had an opportunity to raise the nexus fee or whatever with transit, when we talked about CPMC in my neighborhood with transit, we're not getting responses that appear to consider what the people who live here already know and experience.
Well,
And that's where I think you get pushback.
Sure.
That's where I think people start just not believing it.
I totally understand what you're saying. You should know there are a bunch of things that we're doing. And in fact, that nexus fee for new housing development was just passed by the board. So you're right to say that was an issue. We fixed that.
It's too low. It's still too low.
But there are lots of these things that we're working. And this is.
You put better transit going out to the west, and you could do similar density out
I
there.
totally agree with you, and we are looking at the transportation issues too. So there are a lot of things moving on different fronts. I get exactly what you're saying. It's the stress the city is under from change. What we're trying to do, because some of that change is happening regardless of what we do, is to try to be as responsible as we can. Because we do want to keep the soul of the city. That's kind of our main charge. There's a question behind you, and then there was one over here.
I just don't know how you solve the problem by excluding half the city. I just don't understand what's a citywide program, exclude half the city, and then think we're addressing the problem. That just makes no sense to me. Common sense.
It's a good question. I think
Engineer
what
would say,
yeah.
let's look at this. Where is the land the cheapest? Where could people maybe make more money and build more units per square foot?
It's a fair
It
question.
isn't in District 2.
I think it's a fair question. What we didn't show, what we should show in the beginning is the whole city. What are the other programs that are going on in those parts? Because this is one very selective kind of program, but you're absolutely right that we probably ought to introduce this topic with everything else that's going on with housing. And you're absolutely right about that. That's a fair comment. There's one more question here, and I really want to thank all of you for coming out and staying late, and we will be responsive to your questions. Yeah.
My question is about demolition. I think most people are concerned about buildings in their neighborhoods being demolished. Now, what are the demolition controls in regards to this program? I think in the past, it used to be the soundness report, whether the cost of rehabbing a building met certain criteria. What?
The demolition, there's historic preservation, and then there's the demolition controls, which you're just referencing. Those are both still in place. And then further, we're saying this program won't be available for sites that have rent control in it. So
Right.
there's 3 layers of protection.
Well,
And we're not changing
but the
any-
soundness, I believe the soundness report had a limit, had an upper limit of 1,400,000 or
We
whatever.
haven't changed